There is a moment that comes for every human being. Sometimes it happens in a hospital room, flickering fluorescent lights humming softly, intricate machines blinking in the deep velvet shadows, the air thick with antiseptic and heavy silence. Sometimes it happens beside a fresh grave, coarse dark soil pressed flat, weathered stone markers cold under your fingertips, the sharp wind cutting across an infinite open field. And sometimes it comes in the middle of the night, when the house is shrouded in dark, the hallway stretching into a hollow, empty void, and your thoughts feel more massive than your body. It is the moment you realize everything solid eventually slips away. Life, for all its raw weight and bitter grit, ends. And beyond it stands a veil, not thin, not gentle, a monolithic curtain of billowing darkness and obsidian smoke, stretching upward like a limitless wall, hiding whatever waits on the other side. From the earliest days of humanity, we have stood at that edge, on jagged cliffs, in vast deserts, beneath piercing star-filled skies, asking the same question carved into ancient, crumbling tombs and whispered into the dark. What happens when we die? For some, that question carries fear, a heavy, metallic fear, like cold iron pressing against the chest, fear of judgment, fear of standing vulnerably exposed, fear that beyond the veil is not peace, but something unyielding and unforgiving. For others, the question awakens longing, a desire for radiant light, for rest without weight, for a place where sorrow loosens its cold grip and love no longer frays at the edges. Heaven and hell are not abstract ideas. They are not distant symbols. They are personal, because one day, every soul steps forward out of a world filled with rough grit, long shadows, and loss, and into the depths of eternity. Yet when most people picture heaven, they imagine soft clouds drifting endlessly through a pale sky. When they picture hell, they imagine fire, demons, and screaming chaos. But here is the question that cuts through tradition like a chilled steel blade. Do those images come from scripture or from centuries of art, fear, and imagination? Because what the Bible actually describes is far stranger, far heavier, and far more tangible and real. Wait until you see what the prophet Ezekiel actually described. It looks nothing like the faded paintings on a church wall. What if heaven is not thin and unreal, but vividly radiant, immovably solid, and breathlessly alive? And what if hell is not just fire, but something colder, darker, and far more hauntingly terrifying? In this video, we are stepping beyond tradition, beyond myth, beyond comforting images and fear-driven cartoons. We are opening Scripture itself to see what it actually reveals about what lies beyond the shimmering veil. And as we do, the truth may feel heavier and brighter than anything you have ever been told. If hell is darkness and separation, heaven is not the opposite cartoon. It is not thin air and floating harps. It is not people drifting endlessly through transparent clouds. Scripture shatters that image immediately. When the prophet Ezekiel is given a glimpse beyond the veil, he struggles to find words. He sees something otherworldly. A colossal throne rising above creation, not soft or distant, but incandescent with authority. Beneath it, a translucent surface like polished sapphire, clear and immovably solid, like molten crystal stretched across the infinite sky. This is what some have called the solid country. It's the powerful idea that heaven isn't a misty shadow of earth, but that earth is actually the shadow, and heaven is the substance. It is a place more real, more vivid, and more tangible than anything we have ever touched. Heaven, in Scripture, is overwhelming, majestic, structured, breathlessly alive, and at the center of it all, God, enthroned, blindingly radiant, unhidden, not vague light, not distant presence, tangible and real. And then, the Bible pulls the camera back. Because heaven is not just a throne room, it is a vast, shimmering country, a new heaven and a new earth, solid ground beneath perfectly restored feet. A place more vivid than the one we know now. This is where the soul exhales, because heaven is not escape, it is total restoration. Everything fractured here is made gloriously whole there, bodies renewed with strength, minds cleared of fog, hearts no longer burdened by heavy fear, shame, or regret. Scripture says there will be no more tears, not because emotion disappears, but because sorrow finally loses its reason. This is the solid country, weightless, yet profoundly grounded, shimmering, yet physically substantial, vivid beyond comparison. And this is where the unlikely heroes arrive, the overlooked, the weary, the faithful who walk through raw grit and stark shadow without applause. Those who never felt at home in this world finally step into their true home. Every longing answered, every question quieted, every story gathered into something limitless and meaningful. Purpose does not vanish here. It electrically intensifies. Work without frustration, worship without resistance, belonging without fear of loss. God dwells with his people, not as an idea, but as a living, breathing presence. Pure light fills everything, not blinding, but golden and warm, not weighty, but effortlessly freeing. This is not the end of the story. It is the fulfillment of it. Two worlds, two destinies, one marked by eternal separation, one marked by divine restoration. And that leaves us with a question that cannot be avoided. Because between these two worlds, where do we stand right now? After everything Scripture reveals, after the velvet darkness of separation and the incandescent radiance of the solid country, we arrive at the intersection. Because heaven and hell are not distant ideas, they press into the present moment. This is where the truth becomes sharply hard. Not because it demands perfection, but because it demands unwavering allegiance. The Bible never says eternity hinges on flawless behavior. It speaks instead of deep loyalty, a choice of direction, like a colossal ship caught between two swirling currents, one pulling toward vast, sunlit open water, the other dragging toward jagged obsidian rocks. Or like a soldier on a smoke-shrouded battlefield, ashen dust and thick smoke heavy in the air, having to decide which vivid banner he will stand under when the thunder of fighting ends. Not neutral ground, not endless delay. Every life aligns with something substantial. For men, this cuts through illusion. Strength alone does not save a weathered ship. Skill alone does not win a brutal war. What matters is who you follow and where that shimmering banner leads. And for women, the truth lands differently, not as strategy, but as a soul-deep ache. Because the weight of this world is physically real. The grief that lingers in the shadows, the brokenness that never seems to stay fixed, the endless cycle of care, loss, and unseen labor. Even the smallest things, the laundry that never ends, the quiet, hollow exhaustion, the longing for rest that sleep never quite gives. That weight is not failure. It is a precise signal. A reminder that we were not made for a fractured, fading world. We were made for the solid country, for a place where love does not erode, where effort is not wasted, where every heavy burden finally finds infinite rest. Jesus speaks of this moment as two paths. A wide road, easy, familiar, dusty, and crowded. And a narrow gate, luminous, quiet, intentional, often misunderstood. Not because God delights in exclusion, but because he honors human freedom. He loves us too deeply to force his radiant presence on hearts that do not want him. He invites, he calls, he waits patiently, but he does not coerce. That is the crushing gravity of love. And so we stand here, between two worlds, between two opposing directions, not judged yet, not finished yet, but choosing, often without realizing it. And that leads us to the question that changes everything. Because if eternity is real and the stakes are this high, then what happens when we finally cross the veil? Who will be there waiting for us? Will we step into eternity alone, or is there a glorious reunion that transcends time itself? That mystery is where the story goes next. But the question that keeps us awake at night is deeper than geography. Not where heaven and hell are, but when. What happens the very second we close our eyes? Is there hollow silence, suffocating darkness, a long wait lost to the corridors of time? Scripture answers this with surprising and visceral tenderness. When Jesus speaks to the thief dying beside him, a man with nothing left to prove, no future to fix, he does not say, "Someday." He says, "Today. Today you will be with me in paradise." No drifting, no empty void, no forgetting. The moment the battle ends, radiant presence begins. For men, this lands like a massive release. Life is a battlefield. Decisions made under crushing pressure, strength demanded daily, loss absorbed quietly in the shadows. But death is not another fight. It is the crossing from clanging noise into sacred sanctuary. The heavy armor comes off. The weight drops away. The soul steps across a shimmering, iridescent threshold, out of ashen smoke and raw grit, and into the unwavering, steady light of God's presence, not distant, not delayed, securely held. The Bible calls this the intermediate state, not the final resurrection yet, but not absence. It is rest with vivid awareness, peace with identity perfectly intact. We are not lost between worlds. We are eternally kept, but the question that aches even deeper is not about timing. It's about love. Will I know my people? Scripture answers this more clearly than many realize. When heaven briefly touches earth at the Transfiguration, Moses and Elijah are instantly recognized, names remembered, identities vividly preserved, which means eternity does not erase who we are. It gloriously perfects us. Imagine the first face you will see when the misty veil finally parts. A familiar voice calling your name, not weakened by frail illness, not strained by withering age. A hand taking yours, steady, warm, physically strong again. No hesitation, no confusion, recognition without the sting of grief. This is where sorrow finally breaks. Scripture says God will wipe away every tear, not as a poetic idea, but as a physical, intimate act. Close enough to touch, gentle enough to comfort. Every tear cried into damp pillows, every one swallowed in public, every one shed in the heavy silence. Gone. This is the end of the long winter. The grief that shaped us loosens its cold grip. The ache that never quite left finally fades. And what replaces it is not loneliness but a vibrant community. Where hell is frozen isolation, heaven is infinite belonging, not crowded anonymity, but intimately known connection. Luminous faces bathed in golden light. Unlikely heroes finally home. People who walked through stark pain, through faithfulness no one applauded, now standing together in breathless joy. No more bitter goodbyes, no more unfinished conversations, only presence. And that leaves us standing in wonder, because if the very next breath after this life brings us into His presence, and if this glorious reunion waits on the other side of the veil, then the most important question isn't just what awaits us. It is how we live today, knowing that the veil is thinner than we think. If this look beyond the veil has stirred your heart, hit the like button and subscribe to join our community here at Heart of Faith. We are exploring the deepest mysteries of the Word together. But before you go, I want to hear from you. Who is the first person you look forward to seeing when the long winter ends? Tell me their name or share your story in the comments below. Let's remember them together. Until next time, walk in the light of the solid country.